While Britain is facing a political crisis, Ukraine is watching the fate of Boris Johnson with curiosity. Over the past 6 months, he has become almost the most popular foreign politician in Ukraine. He is literally loved by millions of Ukrainians, and the Ukrainian president considers him his personal friend. Naturally, only the people of Great Britain can decide whether Boris Johnson should be prime minister or not. Some argue that he is a populist and has used Ukraine to boost his own rating inside Britain. Whether this is true or not, we don't know for sure. But we do know that Boris Johnson has become an iconic person in Ukraine. Ukrainians love him as much as they hate Putin, and they probably love him more than they do in Britain. But how did Johnson win the hearts of the Ukrainians, and why do they want to see him continue on as the Prime Minister of Great Britain? There are several reasons. First, Boris Johnson has given unprecedented support to Ukraine at the international diplomatic level. His rhetoric is always unambiguous and not fuzzy. He has become the voice calling on the entire Western democratic world to help Ukraine to oppose Russian aggression.
It's worth us standing up for together, and that is the principle that a free, independent, sovereign country like Ukraine should not be violently invaded and should not have its boundaries changed by force.
For Ukrainians, Boris has become the embodiment of Western leadership. For example, the French president and the German chancellor often called Vladimir Putin, then made compromise statements, and were in no hurry to hand over weapons to Ukraine. Emmanuel Macron, for example, said that we should help save the face of Putin. While Boris has always taken a very tough and unambiguous position on Ukraine, no compromises, only the victory of Ukraine. So against the background of other European leaders, he stood out sharply.
If Putin was a woman, I really don't think he would have embarked on a crazy macho war.
Second, Boris Johnson's personal presence in Ukraine. Even before the war, Johnson came to Kiev several times and promised military assistance to Ukraine. And not only did he promise, but he always kept his promises. Then, after repelling Russian troops near Kiev, Johnson was one of the first to come to Kiev.
How are you? How are you?
You know how
How are you?
Together with President Zelensky, he even walked the streets of the Ukrainian capital, demonstrating his fearlessness in a dangerous time. After all, back then Kiev was often subjected to missile attacks. In this footage, we can see a random passerby seeing Johnson and expressing his sincere gratitude and appreciation. At that difficult time, it was important for Ukrainians to feel that they were not abandoned or rejected by the civilized world, that their suffering and fears were shared by a great country like Britain, embodied by Boris Johnson walking the streets of Kiev. The same was repeated on Johnson's second visit to Ukraine. He toured the wrecked Russian equipment and interacted with the locals, who expressed their sincere gratitude to him. All of this greatly boosted the morale of the Ukrainians. In this sense, Boris Johnson contrasted favorably with US President Joe Biden, who, although helpful, still seems a very distant overseas friend.
That's exactly what we're seeing today.
Boris Johnson has remained a loyal friend of Ukraine to the end.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you. Dobry dzień, everybody. I'm Boris Johnson from London.
Even in his resignation speech on July 7th, coming out to the audience having on his chest next to the flag of Great Britain also the flag of Ukraine. He mentions Ukraine from the first words and promises it that Britain will support it as long as necessary.
And let me say now to the people of Ukraine that I know that we in the UK will continue to back your fight for freedom for as long as it takes.
Now Ukrainians fear that if Johnson resigns, the level of British support could plummet. Although such fears are unfounded, Ukrainians still think that everything depends on Boris Johnson.